Well, South Africans keep digging deeper into our pockets, don't we? That's simply to make ends meet. We're not even trying to get fancy, just to pay the bills. This morning, our special focus on how South Africans have been affected by our ongoing struggling economy. Chief Economist at the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa, it's Wandile Sihlobo, going to be joining us now as we try and unpack all the way from Pretoria this morning. Wandile, good morning to you. And I mean, just where is there a missed opportunity as far as transforming the rural economy is concerned? Because that's what we've got to start looking to, grassroots economy, and we build up from there, don't we?
Yeah, good morning, Gareth, and your viewers. Absolutely. There's a lot that could be done in the rural economy. And I think over the past decade, we had identified the right things to say, let's expand agricultural production in the former homelands, in some of the land reform areas. And also let's follow that up with investments in infrastructure, such as building the irrigation dams and all of those things. But really not much action has followed through that. And I think it is a fault both largely on a government side, but to an extent also the private sector hadn't come through. But I think had the government followed through as it outlined on its Chapter 6 of the National Development Plan, we'll be having a fairly different conversation today about the state of the rural economy.
And when we talk about this missed opportunity, let's say we suddenly find this missed opportunity, Wandile, what kind of timelines are we looking at? Because when we talk about economy on a timeline, things aren't going to turn around immediately. This could be months, this could be years before we start seeing some kind of significant difference literally on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, you are speaking here, Gareth, about the areas that pretty much have not much economic activity. I mean, let's say you look, for as an example, the Transkei area. If you were to begin there saying, we are focusing now on agricultural development in there, and we will focus more on labor-intensive subsectors like horticulture. In the near term, you could create some employment through the process of ensuring that you are setting up those horticulture fields and also putting through all of the irrigation that is needed. So that process of setting up the farming enterprises across that area could create employment on the one end. But obviously, a large part of the jobs would come years later, 5 years, 6 years, because we anticipate that anyway, a lot of employment through agriculture would not so much be on primary production, but rather on the agro-processing side. But I think just starting and getting started in those areas, there's a lot that could be changed. And I mean, you're looking at areas indeed where there isn't much going on except commerce, that remittances and the money coming from Gauteng and other areas. So if you were to create any opportunities, it will be very meaningful for those areas.
Well, let me pose a question that Toombs posed to the Black Business Council a few moments ago. It's all good and well to talk about getting the rural economy going, but as you just said, Wandile, we're talking about areas where there isn't much infrastructure. So we've got to then reverse the process. We need to get some money into the rural areas to get these rural economies going. It's almost we need to put the cart before the horse in this case, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the government is obviously having some constraints when it comes to capital, and we all know our fiscal situations. But the key thing here is that government doesn't need to do this alone. It can partner with the private sector businesses. There's a number of agribusinesses, and I know from some of my members at the Agriculture Business Chamber that are eager into getting in some of these areas. But there's a set of prerequisites that the government has to do on itself. The first one, dealing with the land governance in some of those areas. That doesn't need any extra spending from government side, but rather a change in a policy focus and perhaps maybe to an extent even an ideology about how we think about the land policy in the country. And then following through that, obviously, there could be a range of partnership approaches. And Gareth, we have seen some of the successes of this. You take, for example, in the Humansdorp area of the Eastern Cape and Kiskamahoek and even parts of Free State and KZN, where these partnerships between communities and some bit of government and also some of the private agribusinesses, they have led to really good successes. The question then is to say, how do we study those that have been excellent and replicate across a number of provinces, especially Limpopo, KZN and Eastern Cape, our capacity, but also higher levels of poverty and unemployment.
Last question I have for you this morning, Wandile, about a minute or so left with you. Whenever it comes to the question of land, the issue of land, it's always going to be a very sensitive issue here in South Africa. But when it comes to the non-commercializing, this underutilized use of both reformed land and communal land, we need that to get the rural economy going. So what's the access to land debate look like when we try and get this rural economy up and going?
I think, Gareth, briefly, we just have to move away from the expropriation debate, because the key thing here, you are dealing with two objectives, restorative justice as well as the economic growth and job creation. And I think looking at our current status now, we have to prioritize the economic conditions. And I think that to do that, we need investments on that land. Therefore, expropriation without compensation, it is a debate that I think we need to put it aside and focus on another methods of achieving land reform. And I think those are clear on the land reform panel that we worked on in 2019, and the government and business should really get on with those.
No, they really should. We can't talk about getting the rural economy going if we can't talk about rural land and uncommercialized land in the rural areas. Always a pleasure. Wandile Sihlobo, Chief Economist at the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa. Fascinating debate, especially around land.